The financial planner leaned across his desk, folded his hands, and told Margaret she would need to spend down almost everything before the state would help her husband. The house, the savings, the small annuity her own mother had left her. He said it gently, the way people deliver bad news they believe is simply true. He said that once it was gone, once she had nothing left, then and only then would Medicaid step in and pay for Frank's care. Margaret was 68 years old. She had been married to Frank for 41 years. And she drove home from that meeting believing she was about to lose the life the two of them had spent 4 decades building. She was wrong. The planner was wrong. And what almost nobody told her, what almost nobody tells the hundreds of thousands of American spouses who find themselves in exactly her position every single year, is that federal law contains a whole set of protections designed for one specific person, her. The spouse who is staying home. If your husband or your wife is heading into a nursing home, or maybe someday, this video is for you. And I need you to hear the single most important sentence I will say in the next 25 minutes, right at the start, so that everything else makes sense. You do not have to go broke for your spouse to get care. The law does not require it. It has not required it since 1988. And the belief that it does, the belief that Margaret carried home from that office, has cost American families more money, more security, and more sleepless nights than almost any other misunderstanding in the entire Medicaid system. My name is not important. What matters is what I am going to walk you through today, carefully, step by step, so that you never sign away money you were legally allowed to keep, because that is what happens to families who do not know these rules. They do not get cheated by a villain. They simply give away, out of fear and misinformation, the very protections the law built for them. They spend down money they could have kept. They cash in annuities they could have protected. They walk into the Medicaid office believing they are entitled to nothing, and so they claim nothing. I do not want that to be you. Let me start with the name of the thing, because knowing the name is the beginning of protecting yourself. The protections we are talking about today are called the spousal impoverishment rules. It is an ugly phrase, but it tells you exactly what it is for. When Congress created these rules, they had seen too many cases of one spouse entering a nursing home and leaving the other spouse, usually an elderly wife, completely impoverished, destitute, stripped of everything because all the couple's money had been poured into the cost of care. So in 1988, Congress acted. They wrote into federal law a set of protections whose entire purpose is to prevent the healthy spouse from being driven into poverty by the cost of the other spouse's care. In the language of Medicaid, the spouse who goes into the nursing home is called the institutionalized spouse, and the spouse who remains at home is called the community spouse. That is you, and nearly every protection I am about to describe exists to protect you. Let me give you the 4 protections that matter most, and then I am going to tell you the mistakes that cause families to lose them. The first protection is called the Community Spouse Resource Allowance. In the world of Medicaid planning, people call it the CSRA, and it is the answer to the question that terrified Margaret: how much of our savings am I allowed to keep? Here is how it works. When one spouse applies for Medicaid to pay for nursing home care, the state does not simply look at that person's money. It looks at everything the couple owns together, all of it. The savings, the investments, the accounts, counted as one combined pool, no matter whose name is on them. And then from that combined pool, the law says the community spouse, you, gets to keep a protected share. That protected share is the Community Spouse Resource Allowance. The exact amount changes each year, and it varies depending on your state because states are given a range set by the federal government. But to give you a sense of the scale we are talking about, the protected amount for the community spouse generally runs from a floor in the tens of thousands of dollars up to a federal maximum that in recent years has sat above $150,000. Let me say that again because Margaret did not know it and it changed everything for her. As the spouse staying at home, you may be legally entitled to keep something in the range of $150,000 of the couple's countable assets, while your husband still qualifies for Medicaid. That is not a loophole. That is not a trick. That is the law working exactly as Congress designed it. The second protection is about income, and it is just as important because it addresses the fear that comes right after the fear about savings. How will I live? How will I pay my bills if his income has to go to the nursing home? This protection is called the Minimum Monthly Maintenance Needs Allowance. It is a mouthful. Planners simply say MMMNA, but the idea behind it is simple and humane. The law recognizes that you, the community spouse, still have to live. You still have a mortgage or rent. You still have utilities, food, insurance, a car. and so the law guarantees you a minimum monthly income to live on. If your own income, your Social Security, your pension falls below that protected minimum, the law may allow you to keep part or even all of your husband's income to make up the difference. Instead of his entire Social Security and pension going to the nursing home, a portion of it can be redirected to you, the spouse, at home, to bring your monthly income up to the protected floor. Margaret did not know this either. She had assumed that once Frank was in care, his pension, the larger of their two incomes, would vanish into the cost of the facility, and she would be left trying to survive on her Social Security alone. In fact, because her own income was low, she was entitled to keep a significant portion of Frank's monthly income for the rest of her life. That single rule was the difference between her scraping by and her living with dignity. The third protection concerns the one thing families fear losing more than any other: the home. Here is what you need to know, and I want to be very clear because this is where fear does the most damage. In virtually every state, your home is not counted against you while you, the community spouse, are living in it. It is an exempt asset. The idea that you will be forced to sell your house and move out so that your husband can qualify for Medicaid is, in the ordinary case, simply false. You can stay in your home, your husband can qualify for Medicaid, both of those things can be true at the same time. Now, there is a second half to this, and I am going to be honest with you about it because I never want to give you comfort that isn't real. While you are alive and living in the home, it is protected. But after both spouses have passed, the state's estate recovery program may seek to recover what Medicaid paid, and the home can be the target of that claim. That is a real issue, and it is exactly why the tools I have covered in other videos, the Ladybird deed in particular, matter so much for married couples. Protecting the home while you live in it is the law's job. Protecting it for your children after you are both gone is the planning's job. I will link the Ladybird deed video below because for a married couple, these two protections work together. The fourth protection is the one that families almost never hear about, and it is the one that can save the most money of all. It has to do with timing, with a specific moment the law gives you, called the snapshot. When your spouse enters a nursing home or is expected to be there for a long stay, Medicaid takes what is essentially a financial photograph of everything the couple owns as of that date. That photograph, that snapshot, is what determines how much you, the community spouse, get to protect. Why does this matter so much? Because the you snapshot date and the actions you take around it can dramatically change the outcome. The couples who navigate this well are the ones who understand that the snapshot is coming, who gather their financial records, and who sit down with an elder law attorney before they start spending anything. The couples who navigate it badly are the ones who panic, who start spending down their savings on the nursing home bill immediately out of fear before anyone has calculated what they were entitled to keep. Every dollar Margaret's planner told her to spend down was a dollar she might have been allowed to protect. She simply did not know the snapshot existed, or that the number it produced was negotiable, or that there were legal strategies to increase her protected share. Nobody had told her. That is the entire reason this channel exists. Before I turn to the mistakes, I want to slow down and walk you through a real example with actual numbers because I have found that the protections only become real to people when they see them applied to a couple who looks like them. Let us take a couple. I will call them Ray and Joan. Ray is 72 and has just entered a nursing home after a series of strokes left him needing round-the-clock care. Joan is 70 and lives in their home, the one they bought in 1986 and paid off years ago. Here is what Ray and Joan own. Their home, worth about $280,000, paid off. A joint savings and investment account holding $220,000. A car, and some ordinary household belongings. For income, Ray receives $2,600 a month from Social Security and a pension. Joan receives $1,100 a month from her own Social Security. When Ray enters care, Joan's fear is the same as Margaret's. She believes she must spend down that $220,000, hand it over to the nursing home, until almost nothing is left before Medicaid will help. At $10,000 a month, that money would be gone in under 2 years, and Joan would be 72 years old with her savings erased. Now let us apply the law. First, the home. Joan lives in it. It is exempt. It is not counted, and Joan is not forced to sell it or leave it. That fear evaporates immediately. Second, the countable assets, the $220,000. Medicaid takes its snapshot. Under the Community Spouse Resource Allowance, Joan is entitled to protect a share of that pool up to her state's limit, which in many states in recent years has been more than $150,000. So instead of spending down to nothing, Joan may keep something on the order of $150,000. The amount that actually has to be spent down before Ray qualifies is therefore not $220,000. It is the difference, and even that difference can often be reduced with proper planning rather than simply handed to the facility. Third, the income. Ray's $2,600 a month would ordinarily go toward his care, but Joan's own income is only $1,100 a month, likely below her state's protected minimum for a community spouse. That means Joan may be entitled to keep a portion of Ray's monthly income redirected to her to bring her up to the protected floor. Instead of trying to live on $1,100 a month, Joan's protected income might be substantially higher, funded by part of Ray's pension for the rest of her life. Look at what just happened. The frightening version of Ray and Joan's story was lose the savings, drain the income, cling to the house, and hope. The true version under the law was keep the house, protect a large share of the savings, and preserve enough income to live with dignity, all while Ray receives full Medicaid-funded care. That is the gap. That is the difference between what families fear and what the law actually provides. And it is measured, in a case like Ray and Joan's, in the range of $150,000 and a lifetime of financial security for the spouse left at home. I want to add one more layer here because it comes up constantly and it frightens people: annuities and the question of what happens to money that seems like it is stuck in the middle. Some couples have savings above the protected amount, and they assume the only option is to spend that excess down on the nursing home. But there are legal, Medicaid-compliant strategies, and one of the most common involves a specific kind of annuity designed precisely for this situation. In the right circumstances, a properly structured annuity can convert excess countable assets into a protected income stream for the community spouse. This is not a scheme, and it is not hiding money. It is a recognized planning tool. But it has to be done correctly, with an elder law attorney, because the rules about what qualifies are exacting, and a mistake can disqualify the whole thing. I mention it not so that you will go and do it on your own, please do not, but so that you know when someone tells you that you simply have to spend the excess, that this is not always true either. There are often options. You just have to be sitting across from someone who knows them. Now let me do the most important thing I can do for you today. Let me tell you the mistakes. Because knowing the protections is not enough, families lose them over and over in the same predictable ways. I want you to recognize each one before it happens to you. The first mistake is the one Margaret nearly made, spending down out of fear. When a spouse enters care and the bills start arriving at $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month, the instinct is to start paying, to empty the accounts to cover the cost, because that is what the facility is asking for. But every dollar you spend on the nursing home before you understand your protections is potentially a dollar you are allowed to keep. Do not start spending down until someone who understands these rules has calculated what is yours. The fear is real, but the fear is also exactly what causes the loss. The second mistake is believing the first person who gives you a number, a well-meaning friend, a financial advisor who does not specialize in this, even, sometimes, a caseworker who is overworked and gives you the simplest version rather than the fullest one. Margaret's planner was not a bad man. He was simply not an elder law specialist, and he gave her the frightening default answer instead of the accurate protective one. The rules around spousal protections are specific, they vary by state, and they are full of provisions that only an elder law attorney will know to apply. The single most valuable thing you can do is speak with one before you make any irreversible financial move. The third mistake is assuming the standard protected amount is the maximum you can keep. In many states, the community spouse can petition to protect more than the baseline allowance, for example, when the standard income protections are not enough to generate the income you need to live on. There are legal strategies entirely legitimate that can increase both the assets and the income you are allowed to retain. Families who do not know these strategies exist simply accept the first number they are given. Families who work with an elder law attorney often keep considerably more. The fourth mistake is waiting until the crisis to learn any of this. Every protection I have described works best when you understand it in advance, when you have gathered your records, spoken to an attorney, and made a plan before the emergency arrives. The couples who protect the most are almost always the ones who had this conversation early, at a kitchen table while both spouses were still well. The ones who lose the most are the ones who first hear these rules in a hospital hallway in the middle of the worst week of their lives. I want to come back to Margaret because her story does not end in that planner's office. A few weeks after that meeting, her daughter, the one who handled things, the one who kept the folder in the kitchen drawer, refused to accept that her mother would have to lose everything. She found an elder law attorney, she made the appointment, and she drove her mother to it, even as Margaret insisted it was probably a waste of money. It was not a waste of money. The attorney looked at Margaret and Frank's finances and explained, patiently, everything I have just explained to you. The community spouse resource allowance, the income protections, the exempt home, the snapshot. By the time they were finished, the picture had completely changed. Margaret was not going to be left destitute. She was going to keep her home, a substantial portion of their savings, and enough of Frank's income to live on with dignity, while Frank received the full nursing home care he needed, paid for by Medicaid. The difference between the story the planner told her and the story that was actually true was, in Margaret's case, well over $100,000 and her peace of mind for the rest of her life. The only thing that stood between those two stories was information. The information almost nobody gave her, and that I am giving you now, before you need it. So let me tell you exactly what to do if your spouse is entering care or may someday. First, before you spend down a single dollar out of fear, stop and find a qualified elder law attorney in your state, not a general financial planner, an elder law specialist. This one step protects more families than any other. Second, gather your financial records now. Every account, every asset, both spouses in one place. The snapshot is coming, and being ready for it is part of protecting yourself. Third, do not assume you are entitled to nothing. Assume instead that the law was written to protect you because it was, and let a specialist tell you exactly how much. And fourth, have the conversation early. If your spouse is well today, this is the best possible time to understand these rules, not the worst. The families who plan calmly in advance keep far more than the families who are forced to react in crisis. There is a particular kind of grief in watching a husband or a wife decline. The person you built your life with needs care you can no longer give them alone, and handing that care to a facility is one of the hardest things a person ever does. You should not have to carry on top of that grief the fear that you will lose everything the two of you built together. The law agrees. That is why these protections exist. Congress looked at spouses exactly like you and decided decades ago that no one should be driven into poverty, because the person they love needs care. So please do not give away what the law says is yours. Do not spend down in fear. Do not accept the frightening first answer. Do not walk into that office believing you are entitled to nothing. You are entitled to a great deal. Go and find out exactly how much. If this helped you, send it to someone, a friend, a sister, anyone you know who is facing a spouse's decline and quietly terrified about the money. This is the video that could save their home and their security, and most people will never be told any of it unless someone who loves them presses it into their hands. And watch the Ladybird Deed video next, because for a married couple, protecting the home while you live in it and protecting it for your children afterward are two halves of the same job. You spent a lifetime building something together. The law does not ask you to lose it now. Stay sharp, stay protected, and protect the life the two of you built.